Science fiction. Probably my favorite genre. In movies and in books, really. I mean, when you think of sci-fi, a few names come up, you know. Heinlein, Clarke, Bradbury, Asimov. Everybody loves it for the most part. But who can actually describe it? I mean, does it have a single definition at all? For every Star Wars or Avatar, you'll always have a Firefly or 2001. There seems to be no discernible concept of this cultural phenomenon. For something that has such great a following, it remains fairly vague in its mass identity. Well, why not at least try to figure out what it is? Why not give one of our most honored genres a serious single definition? Well, today, let's do just that. I'm Greg Wyatt, and this is Rayguns, Robots, and Starships.
From my heart and from my hand, why don't people understand my intention?
Science fiction is everywhere. It represents some of our most popular books, our television, our advertising, comedy, comic books, video games. Many of the highest grossing films of all time are sci-fi, and some of the best. It is so deeply embedded into our public consciousness that occasionally we don't even realize we're looking at it.
Is fiction, naturally. It's some made-up story that's based partially on the facts, scientific facts.
I think of Rayguns and rocket ships and flying belts and superhuman powers and bug-eyed monsters and scantily-clad females and rocket ships that were more shaped like bullets than saucers with 80 million, you go inside and there's 80 million pounds of plumbing and pipes and dials and lights and flashing. Bam.
I'm a big Sci-Fi Network buff, sitting around in the afternoons on Saturdays watching science fiction. And basically what they do is they take a little bit of fact and take it to an extreme. It wouldn't necessarily happen that way or couldn't happen that way, and a real scientist would be able to point out the anomalies within the storyline. But it makes for a good plot and you watch it, or it carries the plot along and you watch it and enjoy it.
Science fiction as an entity is, the basic tenets for science fiction. You have a story, and in it you try to have some kind of science fact that it's based on and extrapolated from. So some scientific fact or group of facts.
I don't know that you can really pin down specific themes. I think any fiction, any genre fiction can address a complete wide range of themes and do it successfully. I think that much science fiction tends to incorporate a lot of history or try to rewrite historical events into it. But as far as themes go, they can be as broad as the genre itself is.
I said I was trying to come up with my definition of what science fiction is, and it's just hard to say because it can be so many different things, But, we talk about good science fiction over and over again, even in our interview here, what makes it good. And I think what makes it good is a combination of a relevant theme and, characters that we can, root for against all odds. And whether it's a happy ending or not, we connect to that character and we want him or her to be successful.
One of my favorite movies of all time was described as a pastiche of all the great movies. There is a scene from 12 O'Clock High with the fighters coming in and attacking the bomber. There's the bar where the Western hero walks in. There's one-on-one duels. There's the freedom fighters. It's every movie cliche you can think of. And while they were making the movie, the cast and crew said, "This is gonna stink. It's gonna be the biggest flop in history." And instead, the Star Wars franchise is one of the biggest successes in history.
Almost universally, we're attracted to the genre, no matter what form it comes in. Yet, most people never even consider an attempt at labeling it. If we were to define it, we would need a jumping-off point of some sort, some canon that perfectly embodies this entire great genre. Let's ponder this for a second.
Spaceships and time travel seem common, but you always have to take into consideration things like Metropolis in 1984, neither of which we even leave the city. We often think of robotics and technology, but ideas of those subjects change every few years, so I guess a good starting point is the very first canon, the alien.
Right now, in our society, an alien is somebody who's not from your country. There are many different dividing lines all throughout the world. People will hate for the sake of skin color, prejudice, cultural bias, religious differences. Sometimes people just don't need a reason. They will make up a reason to hate.
Well, I think the alien represents, in a lot of science fiction, the outsider. And, you know, we have a history in our world of not wanting to accept people who are different than we are.
I think of the film Alien, okay, which was pretty groundbreaking in the late 70s. Clearly that's a metaphor for birth in a lot of ways, and so fears of birth, and at that time what was kind of reaching the peak of the women's movement in the late 70s. Women were leaving the household, and they were starting to find careers for themselves, and so you've got this creature that literally bursts out of the belly of its human host, and it doesn't take, I think, a real genius to figure out that that's a metaphor for human birth.
The aliens are our fear of the unknown. Possibly justified, possibly not justified. And the aliens in the movie Alien show that, yeah, there's things out there. Here there be monsters.
Liken them to a lot of different people throughout history, for example, in the Holocaust, the unwanted races in the Holocaust, and even during the Civil Rights Movement. It's all about that outsider, that outcast, that person who's different than the rest of us, and I think the alien represents that in science fiction.
Aliens in general are the new. The Vulcans are the new that is surprisingly wonderful to us.
The mission of the Enterprise, or the United Federation of Planets, and since we're dealing mostly with the Enterprise, the 5-year mission was to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and civilizations, boldly go where no man had gone before. And basically, once they did that, or in doing that, they would encounter civilizations that, for one reason or another, mirrored different eras in Earth's history, and through solving it, they were trying to get these different races, different civilizations, different species to evolve toward a more democratic or Earth-like government or society. And so most times they achieved this, sometimes they didn't, but at the same time it almost went against their prime directive, which was not to interfere with different cultures or different civilizations or different species. But they always seem to do that.
Gene Roddenberry threw Mr. Spock on board the original Enterprise with Christopher Pike in an effort to unify humanity. He was given, he said himself, he was given grief by the by the network because the original Enterprise crew did not represent what Americans wanted to see, meaning that the whole crew was not all white. There was a 15-second, if it was 15, it was probably more like 10-second spot where there was a Chinese man in the background. And that offended the producers of the network. They were like, you can't have that. There's a woman in charge of the ship when the captain's off? Heresy. And what's with the guy with the ears? Well, he said they missed the whole point. You've got the alien here. We're humans. No matter what race, creed, or whatnot, we are the human race, and that makes us a race as one. The alien shows total differences, okay? Biological differences you can't overlook.
The alien in the universe is the unknown. To be feared, always to be treated with respect, and sometimes to be gloried in the fact that we found something alien.
Aliens are common, and obviously very popular. But what many consider to be among the greatest science fiction novels, they aren't even included. Aliens are interesting, and an incredible way to look at the unknown. Yet, in Isaac Asimov's classic Foundation, they aren't even needed.